Hi everyone, welcome to Tom Green County's Democratic page. We're here with Travis Griffith, who is currently running for police chief in San Angelo, and we're just going to have a conversation with him today.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
So I guess you want to introduce yourself and give a bit of your background? And
Yeah, so Travis Griffith, like you said. I've been in law enforcement for over 2 decades. I've worked in and around city government for about 25 years.
That's
I
all long.
thought I was going to be a fireman. I started volunteer firefighting pretty young, and then I went halfway through my paramedics. And I saw how police officers were able to stop things before they happened, and that really resonated with me.
So you become more proactive instead of reactive.
Right after that, I switched everything over and actually got into the police academy whenever I was not even old enough to buy a gun or bullets.
Dang. so lifelong.
Blessed, yeah. And then my time in the San Angelo Police Department has just been blessed. I mean, I've been a detective in special operations where we work gangs, guns, and drugs for about 5 years.
The heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I promoted in 2000. I took the test in 2014.
Okay.
Throughout my career, I've been a supervisor for about 10 years.
Okay.
I really enjoyed, just starting out on patrol, getting there to work with the younger guys, and working on patrol is a fun place to be as a supervisor. And I was selected to be the supervisor of what's called the anti-crime unit.
Okay, so what is that exactly?
It's basically, we drove regular vehicles, but we were the first ones to have body cameras in the department.
Okay.
Because we were actively seeking out people that were actively involved in crime.
Okay.
So we were trying to find those that are responsible for the large portion of crime. Is usually a small portion of people.
And so you want to find like the actual leadership and the core groups.
Right, yeah, the people that are actively still involved in crime, we try to get them. We would do some surveillance, and we would try to find them committing crimes in the act. And we were very successful. That section has been doubled in size now.
Awesome.
Yeah, so, and then from there I went to internal affairs.
Okay.
That's a tough spot to be.
I was about to say, that's got to be a little hard, police investigating police.
I supervised internal affairs there for just a shy of 2 years. That's policing the police, right? It's very necessary, but it's a very tough spot. You need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet there, for sure.
It can be a thin line to walk, I imagine.
Right, and I think it's important to know there that you remind yourself that you swore an oath to the people of San Angelo, right? Not to the other officers, not to the city, even for that matter, right? You swore an oath to the citizens, right?
You got to hold the law.
Yep, and that is what you have to look at, and you do that with just like any other investigation. You come into it, you look at what you think the facts are showing you, not what you feel like is what you in your heart is, right?
Yeah.
Where do the facts take you? Yeah.
All right.
So, and I've also been supervised in media relations and Crime Stoppers.
And all the PR stuff, and community activism. Very nice.
Crime Stoppers is now separate from the police department, and I am executive director for Crime Stoppers on the side.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're fixing to have our very first full-time employee, so I'm excited for that.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
It's always nice to see that kind of stuff.
Because Crime Stoppers is actually, it has every county that basically touches Tom Green County is a part of our area Crime Stoppers.
Okay, so we've got this nice little net of cooperatives that are all feeding into one.
So we send tips to winners and to all the counties around us, and so it's not uncommon for us to get information in a community that's nearby in the Concho Valley.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, then I guess we'll start moving on to questions about the department and stuff. So I guess my first question would be, what do you see as being the biggest hurdles for the department? Like, what made you want to run for chief that you think you could solve?
Right. So in every section or division I've been in the police department, whether that be as an officer or as a supervisor, I've always wanted to, number one, make it better than it was when I started, right? And number two, be better than I was, right? And also be better with my coworkers, right? So if you're a believer, right, the Word of God says that iron sharpens iron, right? So when you work around other people that want to build each other up, then you all want to be better, right?
You get everyone is helping improve everything.
Exactly,
it's a continuous improvement.
It's a very team-minded aspect, right?
Very cool.
And so I've done that, I think, very effectively. And that desire to want to make things better and to prove upon things. When you see something broken, fix it. I was born farming and ranching, right? Hard work, right?
Yeah.
When you see something broke, fix it. Don't wait for somebody else to go over there and tell you to do it. Just go do it.
You can end up having a cascade effect, and so So you want to bring that to the police department?
Yeah, so that's where
overall.
I decided, you know what, every place that I've been a part of, I think I did that well. And then this would be at the highest level, right? That we can see improvements in a lot of different areas, that we can improve our services, we can improve our technology, that we can truly have accountability and transparency that I think the government has kind of moved away from. That's important to me.
So even the local police department, you think has possibly moved away a little bit from transparency and
I think you
accountability?
shouldn't have to beg or borrow for information from your police. You should know what's going on in your community, right? I think that's important. And, you know, when we look at this at a national level, where a lot of times they'll tell us something from the government and we all see something completely different. You know, I don't want smoke and mirrors. I want authentic, true communication.
You
right?
want facts.
Yep. Now there's some things that we can't release, of sure.
Yeah.
We're not gonna circumvent the law or anything, but what we can release, we'll release it. And you know, when we have major events, it's calming to the community if there's a murder, right? And then the police chief comes out and says, "Hey, we're currently here investigating a homicide. I want you to know that our very best people are on this situation right here, and we're going to do everything we can to bring justice. I ask that you be praying for the victim, because we, you know, San Angelo lost someone here, and also know that if you have any information to contact Crime Stoppers at 658-HELP. Help get that information to our investigators."
We want to increase the lines of communications as much
across
as
the
possible.
board.
Awesome.
And then let them know, if we know early on that this is a suspect victim connection, right, then tell them that. So that way they don't know that we don't just think that people are running around murdering people, right?
Right. You don't want panic. You don't want people fearing their neighbors or anything like that.
And the more that you do that consistently, then you'll find that is going to build a trust with the community.
Okay.
So that you just got to be consistent in everything you do, and that means even when we mess it up.
Yeah.
Like when one of our officers gets arrested or something happens and we fail at our job, that we have to be consistent in releasing that information to the public to say, hey, this is not, the buck stops here with me, right?
We got nothing
if I'm
to
the police
hide
chief,
or anything
right?
like that.
This is what happened, and we're going to take every step we can to prevent this from ever happening.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Then next question I would have is, how would you deal with the shortage of police officers in the short term and the long term? Because I know this has been an issue that's been getting a lot of talk recently, is that we have a shortage with not just police overall, but with specific departments, and it's people are having to work overtime. And I saw during the San Angelo Live forum that there was I guess Mike Hernandez said there was an officer that even left after a week or something because he couldn't do the 12-hour shifts or something.
Yeah, I think you get more to that would be, you know, not disputing what Mike said, but as I've understood that is that he was offered a different job. I mean, stress too. Sometimes you get into this position because going to the academy is one thing, right? You can learn how to be a police officer, but then applying the law that what you've learned can be hard on people.
Once
right?
you're on the pavement, it's a bit different.
And sometimes, you know, I haven't had a conversation with him, so I'm not going to give any guesses as to that. But sometimes life gives you a U-turn, and you just got to take it. You know.
Yeah. So what would you do to help? And what do you want to do to increase the number of officers, and then help retain them, so we don't have ones that get poached by other departments and maybe paying more?
So I think first off, I would acknowledge that we have some good recruiters, right? And their challenge that they're facing is astronomical. This is the lowest turnout we've seen, right? In not only in San Angelo, but nationwide for people to come out to be the police, right?
Yeah.
So through the trends that we've seen of kind of demonizing the police, right, has made it who would really want to do that, especially when you combine that with one of the lower pays for a department our size.
Right.
That becomes problematic, right?
So I kind of want to go out and get harangued by the public or whatever.
Yeah. So you really need to focus on people that want to be here, right? So I think that's what we're trying to do right now. Look, we're working through ASU, and ASU has some great college programs. We should be working heavy with them on getting anybody that's coming out of college, that maybe even be in the middle of college, get them on board, and they can continue their education as they're getting paid even. That's one good thing about the 12-hour shifts that I will say is good, because it allows you the ability to be off for 4 days, and then you'll be off for 3 days.
So you can get a nice long weekend.
You can have time off. You go to college. You could do online. There's a lot of things you can do in that area. But the more that we focus locally, getting laterals back to the contract, and I give big kudos to the Police Officer Association for getting that to the contract.
What is laterals for people?
So that allows us to hire people that are already certified.
Okay.
So like say if we had maybe an Abilene police officer that was his wife got a job as a doctor our attorney here that they needed to move here, that we could hire them at a higher rate, right?
Okay.
And be able to bring them on board, and they would go through a field training and not have to go to the academy.
So it kind of expedite the process, and their
Exactly.
tenure at another police department could be factored into being able to pay them.
Yes, sir. From the time of the test to the time that you're actually out on the street by yourself is over a year. People don't really
That's a
understand
long
that. It's a
time.
long process. You have to go through a lot in the academy, then you have to go through field training.
That's a lot of investment in officers,
huge,
too.
huge, yeah. And so the more that we can get people that targeting cities of, maybe 10 to 12,000 and higher, and maybe going up to about 50, those ranges of pay throughout Texas of people that are already certified. Let's say that you're a police officer in Big Springs, right? So Big Spring, don't add the S, I apologize. And you end up, you've been a cop for 5 years. That might be something that we can have a good conversation with. Go try to do some recruiting events there. Trying to look at Kerrville and some of these places. Look at other places. You have to base it off of what their pay is, and try to go and see what you can get out of those communities.
So you would look internally to the city, but also externally.
Yeah, absolutely, it has to be. It has to be a one-two approach, because until we get our pay, which I'm grateful for the work that the Police Officers Association done, what our city has done, for the city managers and everybody that worked on getting that pay increase. However, when we look at that and comparatively to Midland, Odessa, Abilene, we're not talking about San Angelo's job market. We're talking about the profession's job market, right?
Right.
So we're seeing people that can go to DPS, and within a very short period of time, a couple of years, they're making over $100,000, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's a huge increase from
right.
there.
And if you're a 12-year officer, right, you're just now, well, depending on your education and how much time you've spent on college and what you've done in working towards getting your certificates and whatnot, but it could take up to 12 years for you to get $76,000, where Abilene's topping out at $8,000, and the Abilene pet top out pay right now is at $93,000. So if you're out of college, even if you're leaving ASU and you want to get into law enforcement, man, I can go right down the road and I can make,
especially if you've got
more
debt
money
and
faster,
stuff like that. So.
Right. So that's something we have to really be cognizant of. I think trying to think outside the box in areas that we can, and sometimes we just got to hold on and deal with what we got. The more that we can work towards as a community, realize that we do have areas to work on there. I think that's done through relationships and understanding, hey, this is what we're dealing with and why we're dealing with it. I think the better we'll get.
All right, very cool. So kind of going into that, you mentioned earlier, like when an officer messes up or something, being honest and being disciplined about it. I guess, what would your approach be then to ensuring officers are properly trained on the laws they enforce? Because we have had some incidents, some off-duty cops have been arrested for DWI, or we had that incident with the arrest at the Walmart a few years ago that went viral. So I'm curious, what would you do to try and avoid those situations and the potential lawsuits that could come out of them?
Sure. So I think the first thing is that we need to, as a department, train to our deficiencies, right? Okay. So our internal affairs needs to work with our training division, right? Okay. And our mid-level supervisors. They all need to have a conversation once a year, twice a year, to be able to say, hey, where are we seeing our largest failures in our department? Okay. And then we should need, as a department, apply training to that, right? So in-service training, say everybody's going to go through this because we've seen failures in area A, B, and C. Right?
So it's almost like a data-driven approach. You really want to find those deficiencies first and then apply the necessary training so you're not just kind of like shooting in the dark.
Right. You're being very targeted based off of what we're seeing, right? And I think that the more and more we can't, old school approach of training is, you're going to go, 3 or 4% of the time. We need to increase that through in-service training, right? So that means we're going to start getting to 10, 15%. So that out of your time frame that you're at work getting paid, we're seeing you 10% of the time training, right? And the more you see in an elite military groups, the more time they spend training, right?
Yeah, I was in the Air Force, so I understand. It's training.
Because that way that it's second nature, right? And whenever something happens, you know exactly what you need to do.
You just react. You don't even think.
And I'm going to piggyback on that, where I would love to see a different approach to most government-style things we see in law enforcement is a stipend program. So a stipend program based off of fitness. So if you're at 90% of that physical test, then you would get an extra $150 a month, right?
So create incentive structures to help deal with fitness issues.
Right. And the same thing that you could do with knowledge base, right? So not for promotion, not for anything other than the fact that we're trying to keep you sharp. I think you can also take that information that we trained on as a department in our deficiency area, apply that to a test that also includes state law, right? Local ordinances, our policies and procedures, right? And have a test on that. You get 90% or higher on that test once a year, you get $150 extra a month, right? Okay. And the same thing you could apply with defensive tactics, right? So we do a lot of time going to the gun range, right? Not as much as we should, but we do that, right? We train quarterly, so actually twice a year. But I think we can improve upon that by taking someone's defensive tactics, right, and measuring that. Let's say there's 15 to 20 different maneuvers that you have to show proficiency in.
Okay.
If you get 90% of that, then you get an extra $150 a month. Because
so like even more like training in like less than lethal kind of stuff, and just maybe hand to hand or something.
So
like that.
jiu-jitsu in particular has been something that has been a lot of studies been done on, and so if we can find a way to make it incentivize the ability for them to get to a gym, right, and maybe spend their own time, because I kind of liken it to your doctor, right? Imagine your doctor going to medical school and then never opening up a medical book ever again, right? It wouldn't work.
Right.
We're supposed to be professionals. Now, there's a certain responsibility that I believe our police department has, but also we need to put that back to the officer to be professionals, right? Spend some time training, spend some time doing defensive tactics, incentivize that to the point. So, I mean, if you add those all up, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we should ever, I don't want to make this clear, I don't want to ever incentivize like tickets or enforcement at all, ever.
Right.
Right. This is just strictly for improvement of your ability to, if you can fight better, right? If you can run and handle yourself physically better, and you have a knowledge that's better, right?
Yeah.
Your brain's a weapon. Keep it loaded, right?
And you can have more options when those situations do come up.
Exactly. And it's almost like jiu-jitsu is almost kind of like chess with your body, right? You're having to think about what you're going to do before you do it, right? It makes you actually cognitively smarter, better. When you talk about like a chess type system for your brain, it's going to make you smarter, right? And at the end of the day, if you're going to be calmer, you're going to have a better ability to handle yourself because you have that confidence. And so the more that we can incentivize that, I think in the academy, start training that heavy. So that way when they come out, they already have that skill. So if you come out of the academy and you're fit, right? You come out of the academy and you're trained and you have that knowledge base, and then you keep that up, even if just through attrition. Imagine 5 years down the road, we have a department that is in better shape, that is more equipped to handle any physical situation that comes their way, whether that's from running or fighting, and they have a knowledge base that's going to be a better quality product to the citizens that we serve. And so that helps move that metric and helps training. We're training as a department and we're training as individuals, and we're putting some responsibility back to professionals.
Right.
I think we can do that and lead the way. I've not heard of anyone necessarily doing all three of those.
So you want to try some new stuff too.
Absolutely. And it makes sense, right?
Right.
I mean, from listening to that, I think anybody can say, you know what, I think I can get behind spending that extra money there.
It's worth a shot at least.
Right.
Right. So very cool.
Yes, sir.
So this was a question that was actually asked by our chairman, that he was curious if you are familiar with the Civil Service Commission for how it handles appeals and stuff for disciplining and officers and stuff, and how would you utilize that, or how would you try to use it better?
Yeah, so I think that, my time in internal affairs gives me a leg up there than most candidates. So the Civil Service Commission it's important, and I tell you why. Let's say that you're in a town that doesn't have that, right? Then you fall under at-will employment. Right. So if what it's designed for is that if you go and arrest the mayor, you arrest the police chief, you arrest some prominent citizen, that if they were to fire you under a non-civil service department, and you're just kind of there. Yeah, you're just done. You're done. And I don't think that's appropriate for law enforcement. That's why I do support civil service. Is because if they were to fire you under that sitting here in San Angelo, then you can appeal that, right? You have multiple avenues of appeal. You can appeal for, I think it was terminations, promotions, discipline. Exactly. And in those areas, I think that's why it's important to have our officers understand that, you know, when you do get some sort of documentation, right, on being late to work or some sort of issue, that it's not because you're a bad guy, right? It's because we might have somebody that's always late to work, but we're going to treat people fair and consistent, right?
Right.
And that is important, because the more you do that every day, day in, with every officer, regardless of who they are and what they do, right? The more you get away from the good old boy system, right? The more that you can actually get rid of bad employees. And you can do that through civil service. So civil service appeals process, but you can go to an arbitration. The officer can go to arbitration, which is, we bring in an uninvolved arbitrator will come in and hear the case and make their ruling. They can go to the Civil Service Commission, right? So
which I believe is the city manager appoints citizens to that.
It's appointed by the city, and then they can hear the case. And if you can appeal that, even if you don't feel like you got a good shake out of that one, you can appeal that to the district court.
Okay, so you have multiple avenues to
absolutely
ensure that there's no unfair treatment going on.
And then if you go with the arbitrator, though, it's just whatever they say goes. Right? There's no appeals process there, so that's why you have to be smart about what you're doing. And let's be honest. If we're doing a good job as an administration, right, and we're doing a good job with our middle management, we won't have to worry about that, because we're going to put all of our ducks in a row, and we're going to document the cases the way we need to. And if you're a bad employee, then we're going to get rid of bad employees.
Yeah,
right?
and we're going to make sure we cross our T's, dot our I's.
Across the board.
If you're getting out, it's because you need to be out. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All righty.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned the good old boy system, and I've heard that mentioned quite a lot. So do you see this, what is the good old boy system? Because I hear it used a lot, but never really defined. And does it exist within the department? Does it not exist? How would you address it?
Oh, yeah. I think we have that across the board, whether that be in the department or out the department. It's human nature in a lot of ways, right? That you want to do as best you can for your friends, right? And so, unfortunately, when you see that happen in kind of almost a tribal type of ways, you have people that kind of stand more together. So we're going to take care of our people and not everybody, right? And so, I think being smart about that. I would love to be able to bring in an officer from the association that can come into command staff meetings.
And what is the association for people that may not know?
Yeah, so it's not a union, right? So it's a group of officers that want to help better their department, basically, and they do that together. They vote on, you know, presidents and vice presidents. They have a whole board. It's a nonprofit 501c3, and they are able to help advocate in the areas they can. They don't have, they're able to work on the contract with the city. And I think the more that we can bring administration and the Officers Association together, right, I think we'll see a cleaner approach to things, because it puts us on the same page.
Right.
And I think that's important to see, that when you're dealing with systems where an old school approach of, well, this is my buddy, you know, Dwayne, and he's a good guy, and so I think I'm going to put him right here. Well, Dwayne might not be the best candidate, right? And so we need to find the folks that are going to be the best to serve, because officers are super, super important.
Yeah.
But the most important thing that we do as police officers, and that I would do as the police chief, is serve the citizens first.
Right.
And a very, very, very close second is the officers. But we have to maintain that what we do should be guided off of what is going to be best for our community, and in each situation. So,
and you see that kind of tying into the professionalization of the department you were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. And there's lots of different ways that I would love to be able to create officer advisory boards that are inside the department, where they can give you knowledge. I would even like to see us, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, go out and look at and see what Wichita Falls is doing, you know, see what Weatherford and Abilene, Midland, how are they doing things? Can we take anything that they're utilizing in their area of promotions? With this contract, they did just add a process that is able to evaluate the officers. If you're promoting to sergeant, then they'll bring in other officers, or sergeants, from other agencies.
Okay.
And it's at what's called assessment center.
Okay.
And so you get a score based off of that. It's actually higher than your test.
Okay.
So that's a good way of getting back and getting back to helping eliminate that. But I think we should look at Texas knows how to police Texas, right? Let's look and see what our other counterparts are doing. How are they doing it? What are ways that we can improve upon maybe some ideas they have? And we might just, well, I know we will. I know we'll come up with concepts of making a better product, if you will, to our citizens by not just being siloed to San Angelo.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you spoke about transparency and accountability earlier.
Yes, sir.
So are you aware of the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement? There was a bill passed last year that was going to create like a centralized database for personnel files,
Yes, sir.
standardizing misconduct and personnel reports, and even creating a public database of law enforcement officers and how they're licensed.
Yes, sir.
Do you see utilizing that as part of the transparency you want to see?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of that we'd have to just do anyways, right? So,
Right, it's a law, so.
So TCOL was on Sunset Commission. They re-upped it to I think 2031 off of that bill, and it did have some issues, right? In regards to TCOL didn't have a whole lot of teeth. I think actually in regards to that bill, I think they called it kind of a toothless organization.
The first one that was in 2021, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so they've made some course corrections. There's a few things we have to be careful of watching for too much oversight, right? I mean, so some states have gone to where it's just one police academy. That's not super conducive to us here in San Angelo. I think it's a lot better to be able to train your people locally to what we deal with and how we do our stuff kind of as it is now.
You get them trained by people that are in the community.
Right,
So
right. And so it's an easy application.
Easy pipeline.
So like in New Mexico, you see that there's just one police academy there for the state. And, there's things I wouldn't want to see, but outside of that, we 100% should be vetting our people thoroughly, which we do a really good job, I think, of doing our background investigations and making sure that we're not hiring people we shouldn't hire. And
Because I've heard horror stories where you'll have a police officer that has basically got fired for a ton of misconduct in another department, and then they just run over to another department.
Yeah, they call them gypsy officers or something like that. That is that's who you don't want to hire. So in the area of lawsuits, I mean, you touched on that earlier, is that you have negligent retention, right? When you keep somebody that is a liability. And if you hire somebody, right, same thing applies.
Back to that good old boy system we want to get away from.
You want to look for the best quality applicant that we can hire, right?
Right.
And I would much rather have 10 officers that are competent, that are solid, and doing a great job, that can handle more capacity, than I would rather have 13 officers that are low capacity that can't handle as much, right?
So you don't want to just put bodies and uniforms to fill the shortage. You want to make sure, even with the shortage, we still want to get the best people for our community.
Right. And I think that is one of those things that if we're not very intentional, right, of who we're hiring and why we're hiring, we should be actively seeking out to try to find those officers that are good officers that don't necessarily weren't even thinking about leaving, right? They're happy where they're at, and then all of a sudden they realize, hey, there might be a place for me to have upward mobility.
Right.
Because I mean, you're talking about going from a smaller department to a bigger department. You have more positions to go into, to CID, to narcotics, right, anti-crime, bail and hostage negotiation team, the SWAT team, all these different places that I've been able to serve at, really taught me a lot, right?
Yeah.
Makes you more well-rounded to handle situations.
Exactly.
And so I think the more that we look at this, that we're going to hire folks that are we should be hiring, and TCOL did a great job of doing that.
Awesome.
And I think that, when you look at the requirements now, that if you are going to resign, and you're under investigation when you resign, we're going to list that on your form, right? So it's going to show resigned under investigation.
So we can protect not only our community,
but the next one down the road. Exactly.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty, then let's see. So turning to crime and stuff, I know there's been a lot of talk about different types of crime or whatever. What do you consider to be your enforcement priorities? I know you don't get to choose the laws that you enforce, but what do you think would be the best place to put your resources to? What do you see are the crimes that are happening in San Angelo that would be the most important to address if we were chief?
Sure. So I think we need to get back to really going where the crime's at and utilizing cameras, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot of different companies out there that we can look at. I know Midland, I think, just bought 80 cameras that they can use in different places.
Now, would these be the fixed ones, or are these the ones that you can like wheel up on a truck, they go up on a tower and look around?
Yeah, so some of them are fixed and some are mobile.
Okay.
And I think you need those for different reasons. So like if you take this area that we're not too far from Santa Rita, right? Centrally located with a million ways to get into it, right?
Right.
Putting different cameras in different areas based off of the crime is important. And we're not gonna pay special attention to any one area based off of socioeconomic issues. We're going to pay attention to where the crime's at.
So you're going to use data and try to keep it fluid.
Exactly. And the same thing would apply with license plate readers. So you look at places like New Braunfels. Their major points of intersections are covered with license plate readers.
Okay.
And so that comes in huge with like silver alerts and amber alerts, stolen vehicles.
Okay.
Some major crime that we can be alerted to by using technology. But we also have to balance that, right, off the Constitution.
Right. We don't want to be, policing or violating people's privacy, people that are not doing anything wrong.
And I think that's where it would be nice to have that police advisory board, to have people to talk to people to say, hey, what would you like to, how does this make you feel? Where are you at on this? Kind of gauge the public.
Almost kind of like getting a survey feedback from people to see like, is this too much? Is this too little?
Would you feel like we're entering a police state if we have some cameras that maybe say 7th and Bryant, right? And maybe Sherwood Way and Avenue N.
Right.
Would that be too much for you? And especially I think if people know that we're being open, and we're holding each other accountable, that we're not going to just dump data to any one agency. We're only going to keep it here local and things like that. And it's only going to be accessed by certain people, and we'll audit that to make sure somebody's not using it for nefarious reasons inside our department.
So it's almost like just it's almost just needing to educate, basically. Bring people in, show them the system, show them how it works, and alleviate those fears that they have.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And I think a lot of people understand that, in today's time, we can use technology to our advantage. And we can apply the values that we have right here in West Texas, right, of standing for doing the right thing, right? And a lot of times it's doing the hard thing, right? So we can stand up for what's right, stand for justice, but also apply knowledge and technology in those areas to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Right. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Then on to, so I've also heard personally, it's how would you handle like an officer's discretion in being able to handle an enforcement situation? So like, would you be really by the book, say someone rolls through a red light or rolls through a stop sign, they immediately have to get a ticket? Or should the officers be allowed to have a certain level of discretion? Or like if a kid got caught smoking marijuana or something, should he immediately be locked up and sent to juvie, or maybe contact the parents and try to find a alternate path? So I'm curious what you think about how much discretion officers should have when dealing with enforcement.
Right. Well, right now in the state of Texas, we have a pretty broad area in that discretion. And I think it's important because here's the thing. Each situation is vastly different than when you talk about marijuana, one to the next, right? And when you're talking about running a red light, one to the next. If I pull somebody over and they own, hey, you know what, I was not paying attention, sir, and I ran that red light, and I'm so sorry. And I pull up their record and they don't have any past history, right? And they are 100% owning. We're not looking for money, right?
Right.
We're looking for corrective behavior.
Right.
So how we find that corrective behavior, if I believe that a warning is going to get that corrective behavior, then I should be able to do that all day long.
Okay.
And I think the more we train officers to be reliant on themselves to make decisions, that this is not about, the vast majority of what we do is not enforcement.
Right.
It's protect and serve, right? The vast majority of it is serving, right? Spending time at people's worst moments to help them through situations and to meet them whenever they're truly at their worst, right? That is what really I think makes the difference. Not giving a bunch of tickets out there. Certain areas need special enforcement, and certain people that do need tickets. But you being able to evaluate off the situation to say, hey, you know what? I think this merits a citation because I don't think this is going to get the compliance that we need. Anytime police starts trying to make money in their profession, they've already lost, right?
I guess there was one issue I saw that was actually brought up to me by someone at one of our meetings. I'm sure you're aware of Senate Bill 4 that has to do with arresting people that are believed to come into the U.S. illegally.
Yes, sir.
Some people have expressed concerns that they almost feel like they can't even go to Walgreens or something, the Hispanic community, and they have to carry papers and stuff around. And I know it's on hold with the court right now, and I know you don't choose the laws you enforce.
Yes, sir.
But how would you approach that in a way that isn't going to make people scared that they have to carry their papers around with them?
Well, it's just like any other crime. If that comes to fruition, and that's still a long ways down the road.
Right.
And so I don't want to put the cart before the horse.
I understand.
And I will tell you that if it does come down to that it 100% stands, right, then people need to understand that there has to be probable cause, right, that you are have violated the law in any situation, right? And so that's not in the law. From what I've read, we've had very little knowledge come out on this. We have very little training. That was zero training, and all that will have to happen, right, before this ever gets anywhere. So we're actually talking on points that we don't even really understand yet. But let's just say that it exists currently, as I understand it. Then we have to look at probable cause that you are here illegally, right? That's a hard burden to overcome, because you can't do it. I mean, there's already the systems in place, right? With the way our great country is set up, that we don't discriminate based off of your race. We don't just going to go around to somebody like, oh, you look like you're in violation of this, I'm not going to go ask you. Same thing that we see with failure to identify, right? You have to be, you have to have committed a crime,
Right.
right? So the same thing's going to apply in this area, and then the logistics behind that. Normally, I would tell you we shouldn't be enforcing immigration law, but I will tell you this: that the current system that's at play and the way the federal government is conducting their business has left us high and dry, right? We're seeing more drugs in San Angelo, right, than we've ever seen before, at prices lower than we've ever seen before.
So it's
right?
just flooding in.
I mean, when you're talking about what we know of, 7 million people have come in the last 3.5 years, right? What about the people that you don't know of, right? We know drugs are getting across, right? We know that high-ranking individuals with cartels are being arrested in Texas, right? So if they're here, then we know that they're operating here, right? So that's why it's going to be super important for us to look outside of just this Senate Bill 4, right? And look at what the real issue is going to be. And the issue that we're facing right now is epidemic proportions of narcotics, right? And all we've ever really focused on in our community, for the vast majority from the law enforcement standpoint, has been the supply side, right? So we have supply and demand, right? And all we really focus on is that. Well, we can do better, right? Of course, I don't think we should silo work, but the Sheriff's Department, State Police, and the San Angelo Police Department do great job enforcement. But together, I think we should look at options for doing a task force, right? Narcotics task force keeps that work from being siloed, gets more information, gets bigger arrests, gets more intelligence shared to the places where it needs to be, right? Yep. If we can see a 20% reduction in that area, great. But let's also focus on our consumption side, right? On the demand side. So we have lots of contacts we have with people that they don't have drugs on them, but they're addicted to a chemical substance, right?
So at some point they're gonna
right. So let's there's different softwares out there that are free based on where you're connecting the government with nonprofits. So we can take individuals that we know are struggling with substance abuse, right?
They're high risk.
Right. And we can tell them, hey, let me take your information and put it into the system, and somebody from ADAC, right? Somebody from any one of these faith-based programs, right? From NA to AA to any one of these programs that we have in our community to get them to where they need to be, right? I look at it like a continuum, right? Between 1 to 10. Let's keep it simple, right? If 1 being the first time you're addicted to a substance, to 10 being the point where you end up either dead or in prison, right? Anywhere's in that area, if we can shorten that time frame before a terrible event occurs, right? Let's say that we stop somebody on their 3rd time by getting them to the resources that they need, right? That they start to hear the message of what it is to live a sober living, to partner with organizations that will truly be able to give them a second chance, right?
Get them out of that cycle.
Yeah, because that's the thing. A lot of people that I've talked to over my last 20 plus years has been people that they didn't know anything else other than the drugs or the crime or both, right?
Right.
And so if we can find a way to break that cycle, and it may take 2 or 3, but imagine that person that goes all the way to 9. You know how much crime is associated with narcotics? Right? Rough estimates is 2/3 of all crime has a nexus to
That's
narcotics, right? So if we can shorten that one individual's time span, right, to 3 instead of 7 or 8 or 9, then how much future crime did we just solve there, right? It never became the statistic that they would have been. All those different burglaries, all those different situations that would have happened
All that
now
stuff driven
just
by
got
addiction.
stopped, right? And we made a person that's now going to, almost every time that you get out of substance abuse, you go back and you start trying to help people. Right? It's kind of like the allegory of the cave, right? To go back, you have to go back and help the people that are still in that bondage.
That are still
right?
watching the shadows. You got to get them out.
Get them out.
Yeah.
And so I see that as a way that we can never be case managers, right? Like for a full-time police officer, it's not our job, but we can start the case management.
You can get them to the right.
And that applies to people that are about to be homeless, right? People that are homeless, people that need counseling. That same software will help connect these nonprofits to where it needs to be. And you're only spending a few extra minutes, right, with that person to get the information to where it needs to be. And we're shortening those levels of even having that crime. And so imagine now we have a 20% reduction on the enforcement side, and now over the course of the next year and a half, 2 years, we see a 20% reduction on the consumption side. We've just seen as a community a 40% reduction of narcotic-based crimes.
Yep.
That's a safer, better tomorrow.
Hit it from every angle and make everyone's life better.
And that's better than any Senate bill, right? That's better than any issue we're trying to enforce that we don't necessarily need to be enforcing. And it takes the topic right back to the issue is an open border, right? And whenever you can't bring the drugs in and you don't have the customers to deal that you would normally have, then you're going to go somewhere else, right? And so that's how we have to face this together. We can't fix the problems that are too far away from us, but we can do what we can do right here. And the more that we take that approach as a community, I guarantee we have a safer, better tomorrow for our San Angelo.
And that's something we can do today.
Right now.
All righty.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming. Do you have any closing statements you would like to say to Democrats or anyone else out there in San Angelo?
Yeah. So 100%. This we're nonpartisan, right?
Yep.
And I think that's important for everybody to know that regardless of what your beliefs are, what your religious beliefs are, you're blue or you're red, that this is about San Angelo, right?
Right.
And I think the more that San Angelo stands tall to what we can be. We're a great community, right?
Yeah.
But I think when we take these principles, right, and we start applying this not just with the SAPD, right, but with every aspect that we have influence, which is about a community approach to help fix the brokenness that we all go through, right? We're all just a few mistakes away from living a very different life.
Right.
And so I think the more that we come together as a community to say, regardless of what our beliefs are, that we're going to strive to make a difference. That San Angelo can be not just somebody that's lagging a little bit behind everybody else. That we can be a light on a hill. We can be an example for other cities to follow when it comes to the area of safety, right? Accountability and transparency. That we can be transparent to a fault, so people know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. That we can make it effective change in the areas of substance abuse and homelessness, right? And these areas that matter. Right. And it will ultimately, when you're changing people, you're changing crime rates, right?
Right.
And so I ask that you vote for me, right? I think I'm the right person. I'm setting in between generations, right? So I think we can help reach the next generation. You know, we didn't really touch on school safety or anything like that, but I think getting drug programs into our schools, right? And having that taught by police officers, we can help reach that next generation and bring them into having an efficacy level that we've never seen before. And we can truly start to change the landscape in a very positive way. It's about being better than we were the day before. We keep doing that day in and day out, then our tomorrow's going to be very bright.
All righty, then thank you very much for coming to talk to us.
Yes, sir.
The election is on May 4th, and early voting, I believe, starts in April, coming up pretty soon.
April 22nd.
All righty.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, sir, for coming to talk to us.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.